So you're going to align your knees next to your bolster. So how we will start will be, for most of us, where we kind of face towards the blankets. And you want to align where your palms are kind of in a padded space on top of the mat. And with the alignment of the knees and how they sense direction under your hips, it's really a platform for awareness of our movement in our core, right? So we feel this kind of threading of breath into the spine and, of course, kind of the belly body. And since this allows you to feel the bones around the belly body, we're just starting completely different today. And we'll just see how it goes with the sense of movement in the beginning. So spread out the fingers, let the hands be separating as distant as you want from one another. Tops of the feet relax. And then as the spine coils, you're going to work with that sense of moving your chin towards your chest and rounding your back into cat pose. Inhale as you come out of the pose into arching through the spine, and feel when the shift is through your ribs, and just let it be a delicate arch. And then come back to that cat shape. So the hips motion, and maybe your tail feels like you're trying to grasp a hold of pressure there. So I want you to just let the spine kind of wave back and forth. Kind of a spine coil and flexing. And whether any of those words make a sense at all, just let the breath kind of be your guide in this kind of unique way to start. We usually start on our back still, but we're going to start with some spine and kind of core flexion. Okay, now get a feel where the toes hook under, the knees lift up, and then either scoot your feet towards your bolster or your hands back towards your feet, one or the other direction. So you land on your feet, legs are bending, and then arms dangle and come into just a coiling action, just like you did a moment ago, but now with your feet as your base. Feel the spine and a little bit of rounding, kind of a ragdoll dangling position for the back, just a little bit of lifting, and then let the spine soothe out as the head and the arms dangle down to stretch the spine. And hold your elbows or the back of your legs so you have a sense of support and establishing that line of circulation. And I think the part that could be some exploration here is breathing and trusting your balance in both feet, and let your head's weight go. Even if you need to separate your feet wider, bend your knees a little bit deeper, so that whole back source of kind of spreading through the back musculature. It kind of feels nice to have my feet apart. It's almost like this pretend squat prep. So my abdominal area has a little massage from my upper body just by them touching. You can do a good amount of self-care with that connection of upper and lower and breath. And let the brain relax down. Feel what it's like to have the brain below the heart. Let the skin cells of the face kind of enjoy this flush blood flow to the brain. Breathing, feeling what breath is upside down. And then letting go of your elbows or the legs back to normal motion, which means we're going to come back down. We're going to get onto our back in a moment. So thread your hands back forward to crawl, scoot the feet back, and however challenging it might be, right, to find smoothness in coming from standing forward back to hands and knees, toes relax, cat pose, let your spine feel where it has a sense of kind of both flexing and curling. Just kind of a nice rebound of the spine. And then just flood the sensation in the center body of neutral. And then we'll kind of reach our hands to our bolster. We're going to turn so that we are just seated on the bolster, and then take a block and place it directly in front of the, right next to the bolster and its width, right? So I'm going to be now asking you to sit onto the block. It should be like a little, it feels like a little Lego there without anything pointing on you. And then when you lower back, you're going to have a little bit of a practice here of sensing, should the block be a little bit away from my bolster? Should be right next to it. And then once you get the bolster positioned for your head to relax on the blankets, give yourself some important exploration here at, should my bolster be a little higher under my back, until you can find an ability to stretch open the chest and then feel like it kind of grabs your, the position of the props gets your ribs to kind of pucker up, right? So there's this lift that is initially going to start working with our intercostals. All right, so the feet are in a position of separation. Give them plenty of that, so this kind of basin of belly, body, pelvic bones, it feels like it can relax. Okay, we'll give it some intensity, but right now just let the knees bend and feel that centerpiece of the body have its moment. If you have some weight, you can place that across the intersection of the ribs. And not all of us will even like this idea of squishing this area. So if you like that ability to strengthen the breathing muscles and it has an ability to relax you, you might add that weight. And I think probably half of us will use it and half of us won't. Okay, you're in your home, you can decide. And then as you move your chest open via the arms threading out, now you have a little more say in how you move your legs. Okay, so reach one at a time down, sliding through the heel. And if you meet something else in the room when your legs stretch down, kind of wiggle room until you can feel just kind of the trace and the pace of your breath. You kind of trace the physicality of simply opening the mid-body. And if any time it becomes harsh in the spine, a little bit too much pressure, guess what? You can simply bend your knees, and that perk of the knee bones up tends to let the lower back area start to smooth out again. But why would we stretch the legs down? Because the psoas and the hip flexors, this whole area of our walking, creating pattern, it gets to ease, and then the buttocks and all those muscle makers can soothe the core and the abdominal contents. Yeah, and if you don't like the sand here, but your legs are down, you might, the legs are usually down at the base, but you might put your sand on the top of the hip rim, like the thigh lids. And that can sometimes feel nice too. So let's spend a few moments here with the breath pattern. The arms are open and the head is on a blanket to your determined level. So I like to have my blanket, I think I want it a little lower than this level right now. It feels too much chin pushing in. You want to find that your neck is not doing really any flexion at all. So there's no chin tucking. It has a sense, if you reach your fingers at the back of the skull, that there's a little bit of an arch. And then the throat can relax. You decide. If you like 2 blankets, use a little more height than me. Feel where the breath moves through the ribs and use that information of inhale to filter the air in through your nose. And the movement of the intercostals helps the ribs have a little bit of this flare, getting more oxygen in. So inhaling 4 counts, out breath for 5 to 6. With the ribs this high, the breath will be likely lightly challenged because of the stimulus into that rib cage. So let the exhalation be kind of soft, not pushy. It won't be the same as if you're in a forward bend. Just doesn't let out the same direction with the diaphragm. Okay, we'll sample just a few rays of movement for the legs. So I invite you can maintain this shape as we flow through, and you can try these other variations, but finding maybe one or even all of them, inviting their level of, circulation into your levers, right? Because the breathing stuff will continue to be this bolster under your rib cage. So it's going to be that stimulus for your ribs and the breath. Okay, so those of you that have sand on, you might slide it away and then try the feet together, the knees apart, and that can begin with the kind of cuddliness of 2 feet, knees motion out, and rather than fluttering the legs like a kind of butterfly motion, I want you to feel where the connection is through the leg pits. Even though you can't really get them to touch because they won't have this vibration of energy. If they were together, it would be none. It would just be downward flow, right? So you want to feel where that stimulus is through the lymph in the inner leg. And it happens with the feet together like this. You could slide the feet farther down when the soles are touching, and the feet might not be the big toes gripping, but you'll feel their connectivity. That's kind of a brilliant match to work the circulation in our legs. There's several poses that are able to help us find a healthful circulation and stimulus for the lymph. Nothing added, just your body finding its parts moving together or apart. You know, once those feet have established a little bit of pressure, I want you to get the motion of the knees out, simplicity of feet together, and then scanning maybe how that sensation is through the hips and kind of any walls in the body, right? Everything has kind of some borderline pressure. So again, if this is too much at any time in your back, what do? You flow the knees to point up, and you concentrate on developing that openness of the chest to support your back muscles to loosen up. Okay, so take a few more moments with the feet together, just like this, and allow the shoulders to motion back. Okay, if you can find your belt, you're going to get a hold of that, and you'll hold on to it, you know, as wide as comfortable where there's some volume in the arms. So if I spread out the hands too far distant on the belt, you know, I kind of just let my shoulders kind of sack down. They're like 2 sacks of weight, and they don't have any blood flow through them. So you want to feel where there's some participation with the armpits, just like you have the leg pits circulating right now. And then bring the knees to point up. Remember in the beginning, we did that kind of rounding through the back and arching. just kind of get a feel where the bones touch to the block, because the block is the firmest thing you probably have for your support right now. So kind of pretend that those bones are as contained as the block. And then as you bring your feet to about hips distance, as you can tell where you're at. Don't worry if you don't have to go take a mirror to see what they're doing, but you recognize your knees are pointing up. I want you to hold that belt and bring your arms so they reach, they just hold the belt, but they move towards the ceiling. That's you. The reason I like the double kind of control of the belt when it's together, it gives some support for my connection to my shoulder blades. It feels just more defined with the belt. But a little rope would do. Maybe dental floss won't work. That's pushing it, I think. Okay. And as you bring your right knee towards your chest, feel the left foot and its impression on the ground. And then see if you can have any control of pushing down through the left foot and lengthening through that low back, like you're trying to move your tail downwards. It probably barely moves at all. But the idea of bringing energy there is what matters here. So then lower that right foot, bring your arms back overhead, and then continue. Now the left leg comes up, and the belt and the hands pull the belt towards the leg, maybe somewhat close. And then let that leg go back down, arms go overhead. Let's just take 4 more total, but go in your own merry way with it, or don't, right? You can always relax back and just breathe. But as you account for the movements, get a feel of your lower back. I kind of like to play with the ability for it to swerve a little side to side, but give it some character, some awareness that there's behavior in the middle body that ought to be playful a little. It has its typical behavior challenges. So if you kind of move your hips a little bit, but feel the spine gently be stretched by the movement of the leg. Now that we've done probably another 10, lower the belt. Give a nice tight pull to the belt so you can feel the rib cage when you pull, but can you pull your belt apart, even if the hands stay the same width, without clenching in the neck? So I might nod my head side to side. Take just a few more moments here in these shapes, because it'll all change just in moments. Okay. Now, keeping that belt very close in contact with you. So I would just kind of put it right next to your shoulder on one side. And now we'll change things all upside down. So you're going to move your block that's under pelvis. Yeah, I find for me the challenge is to kind of, and I know you're probably looking to your screen a bit, but the cues are pretty clear. Can everybody hear me okay? You can see okay? All right, we're good. Okay, so the cues are clear. You don't have to be looking at it too much, but walk your feet towards your seat. Your block is away. You're going to get the sides of the bolster. This is why it's nice to have the handles on it. But if you have got a cushion that you're going to kind of shove, you're simply going to lift up your hips. So this puts a little more concentration now on your thyroid. Everything kind of pulls to this throat area. But be careful. You're going to slide your bolster or your cushion down just a couple inches so it's under your pelvis. Oh, so satisfying. Now you can lift your knees up and then you're on a cushion with your rear, right? Your pelvis. So this bone frame of the pelvis is on the cushion. Couldn't be more clear. Now, if you wiggle a little bit and you reach down to where your tush is, you'll notice that kind of is right on that same line as the edge of the cushion. You just don't want to be sitting on the other side. That's all. Yeah, enjoy how when the knees draw in, get yourself all ready for this action. The rib cage still is puckered, it's still lifted, but I want you to start to lessen that pressure. So you're going to feel the knees kind of smoosh towards the rib cage. Okay, get a hold of the back of the legs. And then as you get a feel of your knees bending, do you want 2 blankets under your head? Probably not, probably down to 1 now. Make those changes so the neck is stable and containing this focus in the front of the neck, right, in the thyroid, the parathyroids. This will be a big part of what we're moving towards. So I want you to get a feel for your head relaxed. Okay. Now get a belt in hand. I got a loop. You got one too, I think. So you're gonna scoop up your right foot with your belt and lift that right leg up. And the left foot comes down, and it could be straight. You could let the left leg reach and lengthen. You could keep it bending. I like to stay bending so I can get this belt behind my head safely and not feel like I've got too much demand on my ribs. But some of you kind of go off on an excursion, and that's fine. You can take it how you want to play. But as you get this belt, I'm all purple today down my leg and my belt, and my blocks. So I got my loop, and I'm going to make this a little wider than probably expected. So my loop hangs, so it could be, if I pull it or I let it just kind of dangle, it would actually be able to touch my forehead. That's just easily. I want that to be that long. If you don't have a belt this long, you can kind of pretend to practice a little bit, but this is one thing I like for traction of my neck. So we're going to take the belt. I know we haven't done brain float, I think, for quite a while. So let's get in the line of this, but you'll take the belt from the leg reach. This is why you want a lot of belt, so you have plenty of range. And then as I pull with my arms, my elbows are in, so my arms have to work. I'm going to slide the belt, lift my head just a little bit, and then slide it to the occiput. So think about the shelf at the back of your head. So you might even get your fingers back there. Let's say your belt's just too short, then it might be a bit much to work with this hold. So if your belt's too short, you'll be doing something a little different. I'll show that in just a second here. Okay, so we got our belt. I'm loosening mine up. I want a bit more traction. So you probably could go with more traction. If your belt is so length that you don't think this will work for your leg length, then an alternative would be, if it's in a loop, bring the hands inside to the sides of your skull and then slide the belt off. This is for those not doing brain float because it's too short. You bring your hands in prayer position so the belt would just be on the sides of your hands, and you'd still work with the hamstring stretch, but your head would relax. Okay, so 2 options. So once we decide on the belt position, then we get our sandbag or rice, and you'll put that on top of the left thigh. And you could use this greatness of balance with the sand or the weight on the left leg. I find that to be pretty satisfying to get my body into this kind of bizarre realm of connectivity, where I've got my leg positioning my neck, stimulating the thyroid. The circulation is helpful here in my throat. Since this area is sometimes pretty stagnant with circulation, I don't want this to feel harsh in my neck. So I let my head push back a little bit into the belt, and probably could always use more belt. I think we generally make them a little tight for this. So be honest with yourself. If it's too tight, loosen it. You know, they really ought to make these belts 12 feet, huh? Okay, so then we've got the sandbag open out the chest. Take brain float. Feel where the left foot reaches. Now, if you have hardware on your face, you might not want to keep that on unless you're teaching. You can kind of flow with things generally, sometimes in and out of using that. But as the right leg senses that depth of pressure through the blood flow, it flows down, the fluid drains on that right leg and moves the circulation to the vital organs. Anytime this is too much, you can take the sand off the left leg and bend the knee, and it will certainly make it easier. So that would look like just release, bend. There you are with that. Both directions of breath are centered in the nose and the mouth. So even if I close my mouth when I breathe in through the nose, you can kind of feel your face fill with that energy of breath movement. So work on the breath in the body, right? We don't need to spend so much energy tightening into the face. I think we've learned that a bit with our masks as well, right? So just working on breathing and body, feeling belly, body with breath. So we don't feel as tense in the face. So each inhale, I visualize a tube down towards my belly, and then the belly fills up. The diaphragm moves down. I can hear my belly. And as I exhale, it drops back down and massages to the heart. It's the heart massage from that belly breath. You know, change the leg that's up. So that would mean we just shift the sand. If you're using that, if you're not, like I'm not, then I don't have anything to do with that sand. I just move the left foot up into my belt. I bring my hands behind my head for safety, and then lower my right foot down. Now, let's say your belt was in your hands that whole time. Then even easier, you would just switch the foot that's in the belt and let the arm supply of reach angle back. You might get some different breath feeling in the back of the lungs when you use the arms. So if you get bored of the brain float part, this one, you could try scooping up the belt and stretching back. And you know, if you got some soreness in your shoulders or your upper back, it might feel nice to vary things up. And some of us are just big fans of this brain float, so we don't do it often. So when we do it, we do practice. So sand on the right thigh, maybe not. Righty bends, a little easier for me. So the game is not like I want to do the most intense, that's going to make me feel like I did a better session. It would be, where do I feel kind of at peace with the pose? Even though some of them require you to do a little bit energetically, use the props to support you. Sometimes this one feels good. I feel really in control. It's around the shelf at the back of my head. It's a little high on the shelf, so it's not curled under the occiput. Some of you like the belt a little lower. I recall in classrooms, some people put it low, but you really never want the belt to be behind your neck, right? That's cruel. So you'd want to have it so it's on the skull, and it gives some circulation behind, and then the circulation into the throat, that stimulation, and massage to the thyroid. Swallowing, soothing. Okay, now when you work your shoulders to motion back and down, whether your arms are up or the arms are open, you kind of feel where you are in connection with your bolster under your pelvis. So we want to feel like if our right leg is straight down, there's this natural anterior tilt. There's an arch. So let's bring our hands to attention at the belt, on our head or hands. Slide it away from the head and even the hands, but your hands have to operate it. And you'll bring your right foot up into the belt, sand free, and push the feet out. Now, if I don't have a loop, I can still do this. I could have my hands holding my belt across the bottoms of my feet and just grasp, and the feet are in kind of this wide angle, right? So my wide stance, just like if I was standing, doing a standing shape, I want to have that same experiential kind of value But this one, you can be a little bit, change the behavior of it a tiny bit, because you can either let your feet just be free in the belt and not hold on to it. But you can also take a little bend of the knees and make it a little more favorable maybe for your whole body feeling. You've got legs and arms involved. But my arms are kind of open too, right? It's not just my legs, my elbows are open. So give those feet a little bit more time. You know that at the end of class, we put them up the wall and have the greatest time of all. But right now, that's just a tease. We'll get there. But feel where your feet are reacting to being kind of open without being stood on. Right? They don't have to be stood on for a while. How nice. Feet get to release. So from that duty, what's nice is that the flush of circulation in the lymph here and the high lymph volume of the inner thighs. And so just let your feet slide together. They will easily go by pulling the belt. But once you get your hands on that belt and start to tug the belt down towards your ribs, reach your hands up as high as the hands will, just go with arms straight. Feet go together. Just kind of feel this for one last moment, the legs lifted, at least until the end. And then bend your knees. And as you squeeze the knees in, we're going to take the belt off and we're going to get either a block or a ball, either, whatever's easier to get. That's what you get right now. Place it between the knees, either one. So if I have a block, I got 3 different widths, 3 different settings, but you'll go narrow and your arms will go wide. And if that block or ball is between the knees, you'll let the arms go out and the knees will go side to side with that kind of visualization that even though the arms are clearly defined to be open, visualize the back seam like this low back waist area kind of in a smile. It kind of reaches out. I mean, it's kind of a smile, but the spine has this suggested movement. And just give it a few moments. Good. So the hips lightly getting juiced, and just a little bit of hip suggestion. And if your knees go really far out, you could let the feet kick out with them. I would be quite in tune with your hips and your back. And go slow. Now, if these heights, like let's say your bolster feels too high, your back likes some of these directions, but it just feels like maybe it's too much. You can always do any of these suggested poses, lifted up, elevated, with like one blanket, something lower you can use in suggestion of the height. Okay, give it a free-for-all kind of motion. So just a couple more moments here, whatever that means, huh? But with the direction of the waist stretching, I want you to feel this rib cage kind of free-for-all motion. And last, as the direction kind of flings out of the back, okay, make this very improv here. So you'll take your block or ball out. Okay, you're gonna want a block overhead in a while. So I want you to put one of your blocks, if you can find easeful reach to one, just put it back behind you. The plotting of getting into this next shape. So your body's going to be shifting to get off this bolster. So I want you to make a way to get off of the bolster without kind of pushing and shoving the process to tightening things up. So just kind of roll out. You've probably done some practice and some where you have to roll out of things. So you're going to slide down. So you're off of the seat, is off the bolster. Everybody's kind of has been on a pillow this way in some direction or capacity. You've kind of lied on the side. So now we're going to set up, for most of us, our favorite piece of practice is side work. I think that's a popular one. So we're going to take a couple blankets, be lifted here for your neck. So you want to have at least 2. This might be one where you add a third, where you take the top one and just make it a little higher. You'll determine the height. I like my height to be, it's probably right at the bolster height really, but I just go with my comfort. I don't really know what it looks like. I just focus on what it feels like. So we're in this little phase for side work. So I want you to have your block overhead to the highest height. If you're pretty long, this might be too low. And then what you would use instead of it would be a chair seat, right? Or a stool. So you can, at home, you got lots of things to find. But you'll place a block or a ball on the inside of the right leg. Most of us like something so our knee doesn't get too much dull pressure. Right, so the something inside that right leg, if it's a block, you're going to go on its lowest height. Okay, if you don't want anything there, you don't have to. Now, something to put on your side might be nice. If you don't have a bag of weight, then don't worry about this instruction. But if you have something, you're lying on your side, so your left leg is bending towards the bolster. It's not on it, but it's next to it. And you're moving the side piece on top of your right side. Left arm is between the bolster and the blanket. And then you stretch your right arm over to the block. Okay, so here's where I like sometimes to have my blanket a little higher. Sometimes it doesn't feel necessary. It depends on maybe how you slept last night. Maybe you have more height under a part of your neck than another day. So it probably has flexibility on its own terms, right? Your neck. That's kind of funny. My neck has flexibility on its own terms. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but there you go. So play with this arm range. You can work with touchdown with the hand. You can work with just kind of a free, slow range of openness. But the key part is that your head is resting. And it doesn't mean that I'm in the wrong pose if my head is lower than my bolster. It should be all about how does it feel. You need a little more support. Just tuck up that blanket and use that height. That feels a little better. First, I wasn't sure. So open the chest or touch down with the right hand overhead or on your bolster. Yeah, and you don't have to compare this pose to anyone's. You can just spend your energy on my side. The left weight is down, right, and towards the spleen, the massage. Any belly sounds. And feel where the arm has its position overhead or beside you. If it's in constant, like slow movement, you might even stop at a location with the arm and just breathe into the heart center and then let that breath spread to the side, into the ribs. Intercostal movement, intercostals. Yeah, and I encourage you, especially since we're only in the first side of this one. There's only 2 of them, but we want to find a balance, with each of the sides. So you might notice the first side. What do you choose with your arm? And study and scan, where there's some areas that have a nice movement with the breath, some that are a little bit more detailed and tight. Kind of under the armpit chest might be just a little bit stiff there. Reasonable, right? Your arm is usually just down by your side. It doesn't do a lot of this. So give the body a chance to catch up with the breath. You can remind yourself of that all the time. Just slowing it down. Anytime you can relax your eyes. You let the weight be rather heavy in the left hip. Strengthening, right? So weight bearing. Okay, now if that right hand is kind of nowhere grounded, right? Mine is not. I do appreciate putting it on the block sometimes, but it feels a little jammed up in the armpit. So just kind of letting that open. You just don't get a lot of this kind of time during the day to open these areas and flush out through the lymph and stimulate that lymph drain. Okay, now kind of a little curious today. I am shifting up so we're on hands and knees 3 different times. So you'll let your sand just kind of fall off. And then once you turn, so you're turning towards your bolster, you're turning towards the floor. How about that? That's easier instruction. If you got anything that's stuck under you, you just move it away, even the bolster, right? So you'll turn to hands, knees, but rather than spending energy on, can I do this or not? We all get stuck on that with these. Should I do this? Should I not? Just get a feel. Can you lift up your knees? Can you lift up the right leg like you're trying to kick something up in the air? Feel what the back does, the spine does. If that's too reactive for you, suddenly spontaneous, don't follow. It's fine. But get a feeling of lowering that leg down and then switching the other leg up. Let's say you're not too excited about this idea. You could have your knees on the ground and lift up a leg behind you. Could do that too. Be careful in the low back though, just being too quick and rapid between the two. You want to find that reaction in your center because we're doing work in the center with the breath, with the ribs. So this is why I'm adding this one in. So you're just upside down with a leg up, 3-legged dog here. And then lower down that foot and lower down the knees. And feel when the knees are down and the tops of the feet are down, maybe not your shins push down, maybe they kind of have a little bit of lift. And then round your back into cat. And if you like to kind of push back your arms into the bolster and your head towards it, that's fine. But just get a moment of this back motion. And then you're going to come back to table and you're going to take side sage, the same pose we just recently did on our hip down on the other side. Okay, so I am turning this direction, but I will be doing a little bit more rotation than normal because I want to kind of keep a awareness of everyone else or just the energy towards the group. So your left leg is reaching out. Should my legs stay bending here? No, it should stretch back. So the shape is reaching through the front of the left hip. Now, when I lower down onto the bolster, it kicks back usually. It's not completely across horizontal. Most of us, our ribs are not like, there's little differences. There's pretty minute, right? It is a pretty amazing design that they're, you got all these ribs and they seem to stay connected, or they have a little space between. But all the way up, right, that space changes from the base of the ribs and then it shifts as it gets higher the collar. So when you get to this right side, get that sand. I really like having some weight on me for this one. This feels good. And so you get anything, right? A bag of rice, a sandbag. I don't know, weights probably won't be easy to stack on yourself. But now you've got this arch in the spine that defines the ribs. So if you were to touch back and kind of feel around your back area in your spine zone, you'll probably feel that it's pretty concentrated. It's spine concentrate. And that spine concentration is helping your ribs open now. So one side is muscular, one side is, you have this vascular movement. So feel where that left arm goes. Now maybe it's not anywhere I'm going. Maybe you're shaking out your arm, snapping your fingers. You could. Or you could be in a more quiet, kind of soft zone where you want your hand on your side. And just breathe. And I have my head turned a little bit, but it's most of us will be on the side of our right side of our head. Now, you don't have to be engaged with touching your sand or your ribs or all these things I might be pointing towards, but and it's not likely that helpful to do that, because if I keep doing that, I spontaneously tighten up over and over. So your work is on how can I feel the breath in my ribs and feel the centerpiece of your pose. Maybe it's not like your heart or your belly or whatever center has been told, you've been told it is. And maybe the center right now feels like your right hip. Maybe it's this head. Maybe it's your brain. So feel where you reach out from your center. Just give a few moments breathing slow. Expanding and centering. Okay. And with that reach, you're going to feel these visceral parts, right? The location of stretch is so interconnected with our lungs and our heart at these moments here, probably especially this little piece of class. So if you decide in the next, phase of poses that you miss some of this, you can always come back to it and then join in that new phase whenever you feel like it. And there's no restriction. There's no restrictions. You can pass on any pose for certain, especially on Zoom. It could be a break for you. So when you get this feel of the side reach, I think my challenge on this is that it feels like a lean position for the body. It feels leaning, it's lean, it narrows. Now when it changes and everything kind of softens, you kind of figure out, is that better, this one better, or the softer one? So I want to invite you to let the sand shift off. First, you get rid of any weight. And then you bring that left knee in towards the right and kind of roll your weight. Okay, so this whole kind of rib tundra is motion. And then take the bolster forward, okay? And then you'll center yourself on a couple of blankies. So grab the blankets. Don't grab them, maybe tug on them a little bit. And then find your way, keeping in mind that we have a seat height. So I'm going to sit on top. The right knee bends. I love those daffodils there. Someone's got daffodils. That's pretty. Diana. That's hopeful. Daffodils are hopeful. So let's see. We had our side stage with the right knee leg bending. So we're going to come to this one. So we're seated with our right leg bending, turned out. So the right foot slides to the left leg that's extending out, zoomed out. And then how about that bolster? How about it? So get your cushion in front. And then when I'm seated up high, I was here moments ago. Let's just be here now. So here we are. We have our center of gravity. If you have a sand bag, put it on the right thigh. No requirement. If your knees are feeling, oh my, this is a lot to ask, it's a big ask. What you might do is if this right knee is popped up a bit, you can put the ball first. That would be your first option. The towel would be even better probably, because then this kind of takes it maybe too high. Depends on if your knee's this high. You can also use a block, right? This can be nice too. But lean forward, get the bolster, tip it up, and then lean into it. The left circulation might kind of roll in. I want you to try to encourage that circulation on the left thigh to stay. So it's kind of where it is pointed up. As far as the knee goes, if you had a little bit of something like a light that came from the center of your knee, it should go straight up to the ceiling. And then lean forward into that bolster. If you didn't have a bolster, you could do this with your hands on blocks. That could work. But you lean forward, and the reaction in the hips is to stay back. Back up hips. And they center themselves on their own. I mean, they spend their day trying to center themselves over and over, whatever you're doing. They're trying to find center. So lean. Okay, let the back kind of speed up its reach. Maybe you go a little farther forward. Okay, so the arms are besides the head, or the head is above the arms. It's one or the other. Okay, last few moments here. So with that reach, if the shoulders get detail, like pinched up, then your work would be to do a little bit of rounding, just a little bit of that back lift. Because so you can spread the circulation through these arms versus having it kind of shoved into one piece of the shoulder. So spread the circulation would be the key. Okay. So I really love using a bolster like this. It's something we ought to do a little more often, right? Just tipping forward and letting this back area feel also the lower abdomen, giving it permission to soften. So the last pose, we were kind of wrenching this lower abdomen in different lanes. And, you know, part of the practice, I like to work with a lot of this, you know, abdominal, core chamber work, is it's helpful for me, but also helpful here for the kidneys and just all the circulation zones. But then when you lower your bolster down, it's like, how am I going to get happy on this one? So you'll put your foot on your bolster. It's always a good reminder of poise. And then when we're here, let's get our right arm to reach up and then just turn the hand to face back. And right hand reaches towards the right side of your back. Now it doesn't have to be touching anything. It might barely reach to the back of the right shoulder. But let that left hand reach to the right elbow. So my right elbow is pointed up, hand towards the back. Now, and that idea of just towards is enough. So I hold on to my right elbow with the left hand, and yeah, it's a difficult place to stretch. The inside of that right arm, the tricep. So I'm pushing the elbow back with my left hand. Okay. Now this will be kind of bizarre, but we'll turn to the right and we'll bring the left hand to the right leg and bring the right hand back. Oh, that was magic. I had a block there. That was perfect. I needed that. How'd that happen? Somebody brought it to me. Okay, so turn around with that right side. Now you might find you can't do much more, but this rotation might be really stiffened. I mean, I practice the turns often. I've, many decades rotating, and the key here is going to be your left knee is open. So take it back to the center so we don't get too stuck. Cross the right arm in front of your, on top. Give yourself a hug. Just that. Right arm is on top. Hug. And as the hug is squishy, right, you might squish your fingers into your upper back pieces. Just notice where your fingers squish into. It can get right into the bone. And then bring that left arm back. The right hand actually is the leader to the left leg. Take the twist. Yeah, I'm guilty of this one. Is when I hold onto the knee, I'm guilty of pulling my knee. So I'm trying to find my waist during the turn, and it's not super, super spinny. But when I turn, I want to keep this left knee resistant. So it just stabilizes. I hold it, but it's not going to be budged. It's not going to pull towards the right. So use whatever powers you have to turn, right? With breath, likely. It's only temporary. Okay, now unwind. Yeah, let everything just stay where it's at, except for your legs. So you'll roll it out if you feel like it with your shoulders, heart center up. And then take the sand away, stretch the right leg out, left leg out, lift up the bolster. If you want to bend your knees, and that's easier on this one, then bend the knees and let the feet be pressing a little bit. Lean forward, legs straight or bending. It's called Upavista Konasana. So it's the same angle we did when we were on our back with our bolster under our pelvis and our legs out with the belt. When the legs are down, right? It's the same angle, but how it feels a little different, but maybe some similarities if you were to do them back to back. So if your legs are straight-ish, just get a feel here of that movement. Okay, and then bend through the left knee. Okay, and that left foot, bend through the knee, turn the leg out, then the left foot to the right thigh. You add your sand. This time we'll have a little more speed with it, a little more range of reach. So you're going to find the line of movement from your shoulder blades to your hands. Right? And blades are pretty heated, right? You can feel the heat in those blades in the back. So the head might lower down. It might not be interested. You might be looking at something, or your focus could be distracted, but try for the moment in this brief time, really in your whole day of things, to maintain that length in your arms so they're straight. And then when you come back up, I know everyone's height's different, so if these kind of ranges don't work for you and you're really tall, one thing you can do with these, I didn't bring up the first side, but you could do this stuff with a block under your bolster, right? And it's usually pretty stable. The block doesn't like slide away much, or it doesn't roll. So that's something just to know, is you can always make the bolster taller, right, with the block. Now lower down, so that right foot comes up, and we'll take it this time. So when you just get that feel of reaching up with that left arm, if I put my left hand on the back, one side you might find, that easily glides. Shoulders are such a wild complex because they can be just really different from one to the other without you really knowing some years how different they can be until something happens. And so when my left arm is getting pushed back with my right hand, it's really the upper piece. The lower piece is not feeling a whole lot. It's from my elbow to my armpit. It's pretty warm though in that stretch. Feels good if you kind of massage that area. Okay. And then take your time to turn to the left. If you don't want to turn, you don't have to. You could stay here and be serious. But you can also feel just that turning, kind of the weight transfers into the heart, into the upper back, twist. Yeah, so my challenge is I tend to use my arm that's in my leg and I force it. So I've got to find the mid-body, do the rotation without just trying to pull my belly in. It's fact, when you twist, you want your abdomen to be completely relaxed. Right? Otherwise, the diaphragm won't strengthen. So I don't want to stiffen up these muscles that I'm kind of required to have, right? Diaphragm, if you want to survive, right? So feel ways of helping it out. Okay, and then bring the left arm forward and give yourself a hug. Yeah, I don't think we've done this sequence for a year or something, but here we are, a new week. And then when you turn, you kind of have fun with it. You've gone from left, now turn to the right, and feel the articulation in the shoulder blade, spine. Feel that pressure into that mid-back. Yeah, this will be the final pose before we come to the wall. So, just kind of navigate your direction here. If you get pushy with your hands, like you're using the pull and rotation methods, not a bad thing. And most of us were taught that over and over with yoga poses. So some of it has a nice reaction in certain styles of yoga, but restorative, I'm trying to find a way to replenish and let my breath do the movement a little bit more. So it might take some time to be to do less, be patient. You know, there might just be moments you feel that. And now feel where the back has had this turning, this rotation. It's been a churning for the belly too. Okay. So I want us to take the next few moments when we get ready to go to the wall, that you'll unravel, okay? And you'll uncross through that leg kind of, if you kind of enjoy this foot up, you might lean a bit and kind of play with that on both legs. Kind of feels nice with my hips. But for the most part, I want us to unwind through the legs, and we're going to get them up on the wall space. You literally don't need a big wall chunk, but it makes a big difference for your lift. So move your mat over to a space. What will you need at that wall? You'll need, if you have a sandbag, you'll bring it with you, I'm sure, because you love to have them. If you have a bolster, bring that. Bring a one, actually just have 2 blankets because our final pose, we should get warm. So have one blanket for possibly under your head. And then you're going to have a block set. So you need 2 blocks. The only thing you don't need is that belt. Doesn't not part of the scene. So scoot your tush so your mat is down. I don't think you have to have a mat for this last part of class, but you're not going to be needing it for traction. So if you end up going to the wall without it, that's probably fine. But place your hips down so that you have this right angle. And you kind of don't know. I mean, sometimes if you're in gallery view, you can see your angle if you have your camera, if you have your video on. But I find that looking at my feet is probably my best measurement for my success. So the inside line of my feet, one side has a little bit more stiffness than the other. So what I'm working on is having the parallel, the feet go straight up. That's key. Feet go straight up, toes go up. Okay. Now, if my shoulder blades are back, I'm going to use a blanket today because it's just been feeling good to have something under my head. But some of you don't like a blanket for this position. So have a block or a ball between the knees and make sure that it's narrow if it's the block. And then once you develop a connection of holding that block or ball, I want you to feel where the hands are on the legs and the elbows are just kind of resting beside you. No big deal. Okay. And then when the spine rounds, or you can feel that place in the back that's tipped, your work is on lengthening through the back here. So I'm just pushing into the wall with my feet. The block can be a little bit of a nuisance, but it is important for spacing. Otherwise, we probably would have challenge getting the legs spaced right. So have something between them. And then your work is on kind of ironing out that spine. It's pretty flat feeling at this point. Now, when you push into the wall, your hands could stay on the thighs, just mindfully. But most of us will just slide the hands down to the floor and start lifting our hips up. Yeah, if you feel like, oh, there's a lot of tension, then the blanket might be too high. It might be something you want to get rid of because that's going to cause a little more pull. But you don't know until you try a few of these. So I want you to keep the arms down by your sides for today. So you'll lift and lower your spine. Think of this as an exercise, this one. So it's lift and lower. Yeah, this is a final spinal. We've got a few poses we're exploring. And they're pretty high definition, really definitive in the body. So this one we're just getting toward. So we're going to lift and lower. And sometimes lifting higher is helpful. But what I want you to try this last lift before we kind of lock the pose is just notice your height of your ability to push into the wall and lift up the buttocks. Yeah, kind of move around a little bit, you just let your hips move like you're wagging your tail. That feels better. And then once you lower down, you feel like, that spine stretchy. Okay. Take the block. And now we've got many levels, right, in the class that we go towards. So some of us, even if we've been doing yoga for a long time, our awareness, we don't want the block this high under our back. So however you feel, when you push into the wall, I want you to be close enough to it. So you might scoot a little closer so that your feet height, the height of your feet on the wall gets you higher on the spine and massages more. So when I push down into my back, right, this is a lot of back strength. You're going to be lifting up, and then you'll put your block under the low, the mid, or the third height. Yeah, and I know several of you really like you like the wall bridge because you can get it all the way up. Some of you crank it up a little bit, but yeah, some days it just feels way too high. The benefit of it is you can get more quad opening, hip flexor opening. So when you lower down your hips, the back of your pelvis onto the block, second height is where I'm at right now. I can keep my feet at the wall. I can lower my feet down to the floor besides the wall. So my toes lightly stretch up, okay? The higher your block is, the more this will open, that's for certain. Just keep pushing it up. But you know, it's fine to be supporting your back, relax your buttocks, and to move your shoulders down and in towards the spine and get the spine to stretch that way. So there's two layers to it. One's where you tug at the lower back, which would be getting the block higher, and then the other layer would be opening the chest. Yeah, so don't give up on the potential there, but feel where your spine is kind of dragged here through the extension. Knees might be a little over the toes on this one. You don't necessarily have a perfect line with the knees. Give a few moments here. Belly stretches with the breath. Now walk the feet back up the wall. If they were down, they're already up, you're ahead of it. And then we'll do the press into the feet, the lift of the hips, and then you slide the block away. It's bye-bye now for blocks. And when you lower your spine down, really meet the back to that surface. Slow. Okay, now you lower your feet and you'll slide the blanket, and you'll have a blanket for your head on this one. Okay, please do. So now we'll take the right leg straight and cross the left leg over to that bolster. Okay, if your bolster's anywhere in the room, you might go get a cushion. It could be a pillow. This one, you don't really have to have the firmest bolster in town. This one, you just want some height, even if it's a stack of pillows or blankets, it's perfect. But those of you that have a ball are used to using that for this pose. Right? You're used to putting the ball at your sacrum because it gives it an anchor and this kind of wedge and openness for the back of the pelvis and that pelvic floor kind of anchorage, whatever that means. You can add a sandbag to the right, the left side. You can add a blanket on you if you're getting cool, because we're in the final phase here. But lengthen the reaction here in the frontal, right up at the collarbones. Try to let that area not really lengthen, but widen. And however the arm moves out, maybe it isn't straight, maybe it's bending. You know? Maybe you're holding the back of your head. You know, feel for yourself with direction of limbs. And then sometimes your hand touching into where you breathe can be nice. Just to feel the breath in your hand. Your head can roll to the left. Your head could stay right in the middle. You could roll to the right. Yeah, I like the sand a lot on this position for the circulation to the hip. It really feels nice. So something is good for this. And if you don't have a ball, you might find like a towel wedge there would be better than a block because it points. I haven't noticed a block to be good on this because the ball is just responsive. Anything that squishes, even a Nerf football would work good on this one. Probably would be really helpful for this pose. Okay, take a few more physical breaths as opposed to non-physical breaths, where you feel yourself kind of emote the breathing. And hopefully you had some feeling of what you are on this side as far as your range of motion. I know this is a lesson in opposing sides over and over. You can only take so much of that, huh? So once you remove the items on top or next to you, you just take whatever feels, really whatever in the center between the two sides. You move your bolster to the left. And you might feel, oh, you need your blanket higher. Maybe you need your knees to your chest. Something soothing, circling the knees is really nice, circling the sacrum. Not to forget about the sacrum, base of the spine. And kind of feel how the back line can change to the second side. So the left leg goes down. I like to have a wall to push into for that. It feels like it's kind of a spine rebound, right? It does kind of feel, moves up into the spine. And then the right leg crosses over. Then you could soften your bottom leg, the knee, and then that position still is supportive, right? The spine rebound. There's the ball. Where's that ball? To the sacrum. And then the sand. Yeah, feel where you have this kind of elegance here of just letting that leg cross and the arm open on the right. So the right leg and right arm are like kind of opposing each other. There's an opposing reach here for the mid body. And fine tune where your head turns, where your throat relaxes. And we suggest, right, that the head rotates. But some days it doesn't feel right for you. So you might have your head right center, hand onto the breathing. Kind of reminds us to let the body breathe versus the face, do all the pressure. Okay, so a few more moments. And we are going to get into that final pose with legs up the wall in a few. So, kind of capture the feeling of the back spaces right now, especially when usually you feel from the back of the pelvis, maybe towards the back of the heart. That's kind of a area that we recognize the most. But just make sure that all those spaces from the foot all the way to the base of the brain has awareness. Okay, and then as you start to shift, I want you to feel the action of the ball or the sand. You're going to slide those away and stay kind of true to concentration here as much as possible at the very end. You're going to try to roll to that left side, let your hands push you up, and then take the bolster to a wall. You can use a blanket or a bolster at the base of the wall if you're concerned about your back and it feels like, oh, it's just been doing so much today. Maybe you want to have less height because it will stretch your back a lot. So you're going to sit up. I did that for a few weeks. We did the bolster away from the wall. Unless I offered it, but I'm back to the bolster against the wall. Just feels better on my back. So back to basics. So you put your rear right up at the wall. The bolster lift is nice because it actually gets your rear probably touching to it. And then you roll and let the legs basically swing up the wall. Now, if you get too swinging, then you'll fall off your bolster and then you'll kind of be a little fun. It'll be a little funny for a bit. But, you know, after all the humor fades about it, you'll get your legs up the wall. You could push your bolster back into your a little bit higher on the back of the buttocks. So then there's a little more space between you. That's what I was doing for a little bit, but I'm kind of back to this basic first series model again. Yeah, whatever feels good. I mean, I have a tiny bit of space for the wall, but I want to have my seat as close as I can arrive. Then you can have your feet lifted up. You can have a sandbag on the soles. This kind of gets you right into the center of it all with sand. If you have that extra blanket anywhere easy to get a hold of, you'll probably use that. I guess you could drape it over your feet, huh? So you're a little warmer. But you could use that on your core. If you got hardware on your face, glasses, this is certainly one where you want to have none of that. So you can calm into the spaces of the eyes. Yeah, that feels kind of nice. And blankets are weight, right? So they have a little bit of that. And if you don't have that bag for your feet, another idea is that you can take a belt and you can wrap it around the legs. And so that'll hold the legs together so they won't feel like they're just swinging around, even that they feel grounded. The openness of the legs, the stretch through them. And then arms can be wherever you want to feel some balance, whether they're in cactus or you have the arms a little farther out or resting on your belly. Now feel how the lift of the abdomen occurs. And as you rest your organs from gravity's downward pull, and you're relaxing everything from gravity's downward pull. The muscles, trying to release. Even though this appears to be a still position, the inside has features of dynamic kind of rebound and restoration going on. So you can sense the movement of breath is mildly challenged. The diaphragm, soften the belly when you inhale, feel the belly body expand and lift. And then on the exhale, you feel that mid-body rest back towards the heart. And the diaphragmatic breathing massages the heart. Anything upside down, right, is good for the heart. As long as you're not stressed out in it. Maybe let your head rock a little from side to side. You feel how the weight of your head is movable, especially if you're not pushing into it. So purposely feel the breath in the belly body. Let that be your detail of exercise, but feel your head move side to side. It usually rolls, right? It rolls on the back. And once you find that center, it kind of parks itself. Your brain doesn't park many areas, but right on top of your spine. So get the sense of that parked sensation of the neck. If you have sand on, I want you to start to slide your feet down and bring your knees in and carefully just remove that. If you have any hardware around you, you might make sure it doesn't fall on your glasses. And then when you get that sense of motion with your feet, stretch them out through the toes. You might bring your knees down towards your chest and hug them in. You might like to feel your feet at the wall for the purpose of circulation into the pelvis. Just good reverse pull for gravity right in our bodies to get a little bit upside down. Okay, and finally, when your knees go in, I want us to roll to the side and nurture that line in the back. So you're going to roll and then take the position of your body next to the wall so that you can finish the practice with a sense of your seat on height and the position of the shoulders behind you. I know they tend to go forward. So this gives us a reminder of our lift of our chest, not our spine, right? As much of as this chest area and shoulder area can give you that, to try to use that to lift. Yeah, rest your hands in front of your heart. Your palms can be touching. The hands might get a feeling of spreading out through the fingers, and the bones of the hands are many. And let's momentarily feel the collective consciousness, just sliding the head down, chin towards chest, honoring and breathing in to receive wellness from your practice today. On the exhalation, bowing into your heart.